Hi, this is Dan Pastorini, and you're listening to The Grilling Truth.
Welcome to the Grueling Truth NFL Legends Show, brought to you by Gridiron Mo. Gridiron Mo is an interactive football app where you get to call what you think the offense or defense should do during a live NFL game and see what all other fans have called also. Check out Gridiron Mo at www.gridironmo.com. As always, I'm your host for the Legends Show, Mike Goodpaster. Our guest today is best known as the man that scored the only touchdown in Super Bowl VII for the Redskins, but he was also a great player, named one of the top 80 Redskins in that team's storied history. Please help me welcome to the Grueling Truth, former Redskin defensive back, Mike Bass.
Well, how are you, Mike? I'm glad to be with you. Thank you for inviting me.
It's an honor to have you on. So tell us a little bit about your life growing up and when you started playing football.
Boy, I started playing football, as long as I can remember. I grew up in a little town outside of Ann Arbor, Michigan, called Ypsilanti. And I spent all of my growing up years there. And actually, when I got out of high school, or just before getting out of high school, I went all over the country trying to decide what kind of where I'd like to go to school. And after
talked about that, what led you to stay basically at home at the University of Michigan?
Well, first of all, my father was a doctor, and my mother was a teacher, and education always played an important part in our lives. And I made the decision to play to accept the scholarship at Michigan because of the academic aspects that Michigan offered. It's a long tradition. They were winners. There were a number of fellows from my hometown who actually went to Michigan. One was Lowell Perry, who was an All-American at Michigan, and then went on to play for the Steelers. And so in making that decision, I ended up, after going all over the country, going 7 miles away to Ann Arbor.
All right, so you want to tell us a little bit about your experiences at the University of Michigan?
Well, it was obviously in the 60s, and during those turbulent times, and so a lot of times it was hard to concentrate with all of the social issues that were going on. But Michigan was really very advanced, and quite frankly, it began to recruit more and more black players, and that was a godsend too. Michigan State had been getting really a lot of those players, particularly out of Texas, Bubba Smith, Gene Washington, a number of other players. I think our class had a number of players, black players, that went on to play professional football. But all in all, we had a really good players on that team. And when I graduated from Michigan, there were a number of us who did go to the pros. Frank Nunley, for example, went to the 49ers as a linebacker. He was from Belleville, Michigan. Also, John Rouser, a defensive back, went to Green Bay. I went to Green Bay as well. And Rick Volk, a defensive back for the Colts, ended up going there and being drafted. Also, Tom Mack, who's in the Hall of Fame, went to Michigan as well. So we had a pretty good crew there. Our coach was Bump Elliott, but Michigan during that time in the 60s actually was, I think Bo Schembechler came in the year after we left. And, of course, everybody knows Bo Schembechler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He turned the program around big time. I mean, actually, Michigan was probably more of a basketball school when you were there. Cassie Russell taking them to the Final Four, wasn't it?
That's right. Cassie Russell, Oliver Darden, Bill Bunton. It was Rudy Tomjanovich went to Michigan as well. He got out the I think a year or two after I graduated. But once I graduated, I was drafted. By the way, my degree's in psychology. Once I graduated, I actually was drafted by the Packers and Coach Lombardi. And
so
that was an experience in itself.
Yeah, what were your feelings to be drafted by the Packers? And especially, I think it was 1967 you were drafted.
Yeah, 67. Well, it was kind of ironic that my teammate from Michigan, John Rouser, and I were both drafted by the Packers as defensive backs, and they could only keep one of us. At that time, the Packers were loaded with Herb Adderley, Bob Jeter, Willie Wood. There wasn't a lot of room for a rookie defensive back. And I don't know if it's unfortunately or fortunately, but I got cut the last cut before the season began. But I remember Coach Lombardi telling me, Mike, you can play in this league. And that stayed with me. And I was lucky enough to be picked up by the Lions. And I was there with the Lions for 2 years, but they never saw much in me. So
and you ended up being, from the research I did, ended up being on the taxi squad. For some of the younger listeners, you want to explain exactly what the taxi squad and what that entailed?
Yeah, well, the taxi squad is really like a reserve squad. If someone got hurt or you showed development, you were brought up to the regular team. It's like a farm team, only you're right there with the regular team, and a lot of times you're fodder for the regular team, but that's okay. You're still in the league, and you're still looking for your opportunity. But I was fortunate because the prior year, Coach Lombardi, after my first year in Detroit, he retired, and then he came out of retirement after my second year in Detroit and asked me to come to Washington, and I jumped at the chance. And I ended up going to Washington. This was in '69.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that. You went with Vince Lombardi, one of the greatest, and you ended up playing for two of the greatest coaches in NFL history. We'll start off with the first one, which would be Vince Lombardi. How did he turn the Redskins around so quickly, and what kind of effect did he have on you as a person and a player?
Well, Coach Lombardi was a taskmaster. The one thing that everyone says is that he treated everybody the same, just like dogs. but that was kind of an endearing type of situation. He demanded perfection. His offenses and defenses were very, very simple, but you ran them over and over and over again, and so that plays that you ran perfectly. And everyone fought just to get him to say, good job. But you could tell that he was very interested in us and in our family lives, and he was a very religious person, and he understood a lot of what was going on, not only during that time, but also going on with professional athletics, and particularly football. As a matter of fact, during I think that first year there was a strike, and he would not let any of us cross the picket line because he knew that would fracture the team, and it was team that was most important with him, and it meant an awful lot. And he drove us hard, but he also knew when to let up. He knew what players to stay on. He knew what players to kind of leave alone. And I have to admit that because of him, I got my first opportunity during the first week of training camp. I was inserted as the starter. And being somewhat of a rookie, really, I was looking at players like Bobby Mitchell, Charlie Taylor. Just these are great receivers. Jerry Smith. And so I cut my teeth on those guys, and it helped me tremendously. And I began to learn football. The first 5 years, you always say it's a lot of fun. The second 5 years, it's a job. But through just constant study and watching film and concentrating on technique, this made all the difference in the world. I have to also credit my college coach, defensive backfield coach, Don James, who was at Michigan at the time that I was there and went on to coach at the University of Washington.
Yeah, won a national championship there, too.
That's right. That's exactly right. And he set the foundation, and it was Coach Lombardi who brought everything to the forefront.
All right, so you talk coaching-wise, people that had helped you. Was there anybody when you got to the Redskins or maybe before with the Lions that kind of took you under their wing?
Well, no one at it was a totally different atmosphere in Detroit in comparison to Green Bay and then in comparison to Washington. I got virtually no help, help at all. Some encouragement from the defensive backfield coach, a fellow by the name of Jimmy David, who has since passed on. But other than that, I really got my inspiration more so from Coach Lombardi and really Sam Huff, who was came out of retirement. He was with the Giants for many years, and then he was traded to Washington. He came out of retirement when Coach Lombardi came to Washington. And the other person that was very, very helpful was Chris Hanberger, who's now in the Hall of Fame. I learned a lot from him when I first got there. And then one of my closest friends on the team, Brig Owens, sort of kind of took me under his wing as well. So I got I felt needed and I felt wanted, and that made a whole lot of difference when I went to Washington. Unfortunately, after 1 year, Coach Lombardi passed away, and during that year we just had a dismal season. But then the following year, George Allen came in.
Yeah, you talked about that. I mean, after the 69 season, I think Coach Lombardi was diagnosed with cancer in, like, June.
That's right.
He passed by September. I think Bill Austin took over. But then 1971 brought you another legendary coach, George Allen, to the Redskins. What are your thoughts on Coach Allen?
Coach Allen, George Allen, was like no other coach that one could think of. He was a proven winner. He was a player's coach. He would do anything to win. But more than anything, it was his belief that defense wins championships. And he changed the whole philosophy of Washington Redskins football. Defense wins championships. His motto was, okay, offense, you go in there and hold them, and the defense will win the game for you.
Yeah.
But he was a player's coach. He really took care of his players. He really felt for them. And he was like no other person other than really Coach Lombardi, who showed and was not afraid to show that he cared. His emphasis, again, was on team. And he, especially the three aspects of football, offense, defense, and special teams. And he was known to keep players maybe a year or two past their prime, specifically for their leadership qualities. You have, of course, coaches, but really it is the leaders of a team that can inspire the whole team. If you've played for a number of years, you get tired of the same old pep talks and the same old challenges and so forth, but it's your teammates who I guess make you rise to the occasion, who give you the feeling that you can't let the other person down, that you're all in this thing together. And when you're all pulling together, you just can't be defeated. And that's the atmosphere and attitude that he brought. He just changed the culture altogether in Washington. Coach Lombardi began that change, and George Allen completed that change. And we were known as a very, very excitable bunch of guys. And we were known as the over-the-hill gang, too. If you were a youngster, you didn't really stand a chance. George said, let somebody else train the rookies. I'll take them after they've gotten a little smarter. And that was his philosophy. So the majority of us were over 30 years old. We may not have run as fast or be as quick, but we made up for it in experience. And again, I learned the beauty of watching film and maintaining technique that can carry you a long way. I notice a lot of times the athletes, the football players today, they're so athletically gifted, but there comes a time when that athleticism kind of begins to dwindle, and that's the time when you need to call on your experience and your knowledge, and in a lot of instances, that's not the case with many of the defensive backs that are playing today, although they're making 100 times more money than we ever made.
Well, the rules are much different. A lot easier to be a defensive back today, too, I think, or a lot harder to be a defensive back nowadays because you can't touch anybody, can't even breathe on anybody.
Yeah, that's right. You're right about that. Wear these wide receivers out.
Yeah, the one thing that really gets me I've interviewed a lot of former players over the last year, and the guys that really stand out coaching-wise to me from the players I've talked to are George Allen, Bum Phillips, and Vince Lombardi. The guys like Jerry Kramer, who we had on the show talking about Lombardi, or Eddie Metter, the great Rams defensive back. But the thing that always strikes me is when players talk about their greatest coaches, when they talk about these guys, whether it's Lombardi, Phillips, or whoever, the thing they always bring up that always strikes a chord with them was that these coaches really cared about them as people also. Yeah. And the great coaches do. There is more to being a coach than just X's and O's. And if players feel that you're not going to watch their backs, that you're always going to side with the management, you're not going to upset the apple cart, then the feeling is that this whole thing of camaraderie and teamwork only works one way, when things are going, good. And there's no secret that the owners are greedy. The owners only are interested in making money. And to an extent, even the Players Association has not watched out for those of us who helped the current players today get the financial security that they have. From the players I've talked to that played even farther back than what you played, when they tell me what their pension is, it's just amazing when you compare it to what that league is making right now. Oh, absolutely. And the NFL, they're like an ostrich with their head in the sand. To say that there's no relationship between concussions and football is ludicrous. It's like these
these people who don't accept climate change with all that's going on, storms, winter, weather here in April. Some things are ridiculous, but you have people who hear what they want to hear. And for the owners to think that there is no relationship is they're supposed to be smart people, and they probably are smart in thinking that everybody else is stupid or dumb.
Yeah, well, they're dead on there. I mean, come on. We're in a world where Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are the main people running for president. Who would have thought something like that would have ever happened?
Yeah.
But
right.
So let's talk about the 1971 season. The Redskins make their first playoff appearance in 26 years. You lose a close 24-20 game at San Francisco against the 49ers. Mm-hmm. What are some of your recollections of that game?
Well, that game is kind of a blur to me. That particular season, again, I was just happy to be in the league. The culmination of that season was our victory over first the Packers in the playoffs, which was kind of bittersweet in as much as the team itself had cut me, and then the victory over our arch rival, the Cowboys.
Yeah, you're talking about the 1972 season?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead. Talk about that playoff run a little bit and what the atmosphere was around D.C. because, like I said, they hadn't been to the playoffs in almost 30 years.
Right, that's right. I mean, it was Washington just was a buzz, and they, of course, weren't used to winning. But George Allen just and the team just captivated the entire city. We even got a visit by Nixon.
How was
that? One of our practices. Everybody jumped on the bandwagon, and we played well. As a matter of fact, with George Allen, during all of our seasons, we played well. We were really perennial winners, and we wore that title very, very well. Because we knew that being older players, we as individuals could not do it alone. We had to depend on each other. Probably would take us 10 minutes to run a 100-yard dash. But as a team with coordinated defenses and knowledgeable and experienced people on offense, we were winners. And we knew that. The confidence was there. Offensively, you couldn't ask for two better quarterbacks than Sonny Jurgensen and Billy Kilmer. And again, there was Charlie Taylor. And George made the move to bring in another wide receiver, Roy Jefferson, who fit right in, and Jerry Smith at tight end. Jerry should be in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, yeah, one of the top 10 tight ends in history, I believe. I actually wrote an article about guys that I thought should be in there, and or we did a show on top 10 tight ends of all time, and I know he was in my top 10.
Yeah, well, those of us who know why he's not, and that's because of the homophobes who are making the decisions.
Yeah,
we knew that he was gay, but that had nothing to do with how he played. As a matter of fact, up until recently, he actually held most of the records for tight ends. And there are some tight ends in the Hall of Fame who don't have the stats that he has. So it's really a black eye on those writers who are making decisions about who should and should not go into the Hall of Fame.
Well, those writers give themselves black eyes all the time for the stupid reasons guys aren't in the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one of the best outside linebackers I ever saw play the game was Robert Brazil. He gets completely ignored. I mean, as we talked, Eddie Metter, who was on the Rams, I still think he holds like six Rams records as of today. He doesn't even get a sniff on it.
Yeah. Well, so many of these writers never put on a jockstrap. and yet they're making decisions. For example, with defensive backs, they measure the quality of a defensive back by how many interceptions that defensive back has. But in reality, if you have a defensive back that's making a lot of interceptions, that's a defensive back that they're throwing at because there are weaknesses.
Yeah.
In that particular guy. So.
And you look at a guy like Ken Riley. I think he's third all time in interceptions still, and nobody pays attention to him.
Yeah. So we all would love to be in the Hall of Fame, but we know that those are things outside of our control. It would probably be so much better if the players were making those decisions and not a bunch of writers who are enamored with themselves.
Yeah, who have no clue what's going on, and because somebody's nice to them. Yeah, I mean, you got a Marv Levy who's nice to the media that gets in the Hall of Fame. You got Tom Flores who won 2 Super Bowls, and nobody even thinks about him.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
So let's talk a little bit more about this.
I'm kind of biased, though, because Marv Levy was our special teams coach when we went to the Super Bowl. Good coach, and he made it to 4 Super Bowls. So, but you're right when overlooking.
Yeah, my biggest problem in Marv Levy being in is the fact that Tom Flores did with 2 Super Bowl rings plus everything else that he accomplished.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so let's talk a little bit about the 72 season. I mean, I think people forget how great that Redskin defense was. I think in the playoffs, the 2 playoff games, you gave up, a total of 6 points to Super Bowl 14, so 20 points in 3 games. And, I mean, the Cowboys and the Dolphins teams were 2 great teams. You want to talk a little bit about Super Bowl 7 and what it was like the weeks leading up to it, and what do you think it is in comparison to what it's turned into today?
Well, first of all, we knew that we deserved to go, and we played like it. We were actually favored to win, and George was one of those coaches who would do anything virtually to win. But that week leading up to the Super Bowl, there was a bit of tension or apprehension that I think came from the coaches, and it kind of filtered down to us players. Generally, if you held a team to under 21 points, you're supposed to win.
Yeah.
And we actually held the Dolphins to 14 points. But at the same time, I cannot take anything away from the Dolphins. They had gone through the season undefeated, primarily because of the work of Earl Morrall. And they had a defense, too, called the no-name defense. And normally our offense would play against 4-3 defenses with no man over the head of the center. But the Dolphins had a 5-2 or 5-3, but they had a man over the center, and that was Manny Fernandez. And he was very, very, very quick. I think that perhaps had we been able to make some adjustments during the at the half, we could have overcome his ability of changing some blocking schemes. But I'm not going to put it all on the offense. Our defense gave up 14 points, and we were accustomed to giving up very few points. But we made a couple of mistakes, and with our offense, one of the balls to Jerry Smith hit the goal post. Charlie Taylor stumbled on what should have been a sure touchdown catch. So we had our opportunities, but we didn't take advantage of them. And they were a tough team. They ran the ball well. Their defense was great, and they harassed Larry Brown, Charlie Haraway, and Billy Kilmer the entire game. So they deserved to win. They played better on that day. But at the same time, we just felt that we should have won, having held them to less than 21 points.
All right. Now, you guys scored the 7 points on special teams. You know we have to talk about this. So, the Garrow premium play, you want to run us through that a little bit?
Well, ironically, Garrow and I, we were with the Lions together.
Yeah.
And we were on the Lions cab squad, taxi squad. And we both left the Lions, happy to get away from them. And he went to Miami, and I went to Washington. And we had been friends even before that Super Bowl game. And we've been friends down through the years. Unfortunately, he passed away last year. It was kind of devastating. Sorry to lose him like that. But from a brain tumor. But Garrow really was an exceptional kicker. Now we, because of Marv Levy, spent a lot of time on special teams. Again, watching film to see if we could locate weaknesses. And we found a weakness, Marv did, and we exploited that on that attempt by Garrow to kick a field goal. We also noticed, too, that in warm-ups his kicks were a little bit lower than they normally are. And it was either Bill Brundage or Teddy Vactor who blocked that kick. And my job on the field goal prevent team was that of what we call the spy man. And my specific job was to be there in case the kick was blocked. And I can recall on a couple of occasions during the regular seasons, there were blocked field goals, and I think I picked up one or two and ran them for touchdowns. So that, of course, heightened my awareness of the fact that we could get a blocked kick of one sort or another, particularly on field goals. Well, as a spy man, I just kind of sauntered in when the ball was snapped, thinking that I need to be there in case the kick was blocked. And lo and behold, it was blocked. But then when I saw Garrow grab the ball, he was a kicker. Very seldom do we get a chance to hit a kicker. And so I tore off trying to get my lick on him. And he actually fumbled the ball up in the air, batted it, and I just went up instinctively and grabbed the ball. And my next thought once I grabbed the ball was, I can't let this kicker tackle me. I would never hear at the end of it from anybody, particularly my teammates. There were fellows like Dyron Talbot and a couple of the other fellows that would never, ever let you forget getting tackled by a kicker. And so I tore down the sidelines and had to get away from Garrow, and then there was Earl Morrow. I had to get away from him. But after that, it was an easy score, and it brought the game back into the possibility of our being able to win it. And
I mean, the other thing is this got to be great, is every year it's Super Bowl time, you get to see yourself on TV. So that one play will make sure that nobody ever forgets you.
Well, you know, it's great to I guess, be remembered for that particular play, but still in the pros, a tie or losing is like kissing your sister. No one ever remembers the team that finished second. But the other thing is this: they've played that play for nearly 50 years. and I've never made one dime from it. The NFL has used my likeness or used that film to promote the NFL, and when we as players were making a pittance, they've continued to use that play, and I've never made 10 cents from it. I'm 71 years old now, and I guess I look at things a little bit differently now. I look at things somewhat from a mercenary point of view, just like the owners. They didn't give a damn about the players, and all they were interested in was the money.
Well, and, plus a lot of the problems you got are when you're a player, like the players today, that seem to never give anything back either, is when you're playing and you're 26, 27 years old in the NFL, you don't think it's ever going to end.
Yeah, you're right. It's like getting a fast car and driving 120 miles an hour. Fear never even entered into it. And maybe that's why there's such a push to recruit people for the military. These kids have no fear.
You got to get them young and dumb. That way
young and dumb. That's it, young and dumb.
All right, now you have some great teammates I wanted you to talk a little bit about. Pat Fisher, Kenny Houston. You want to talk a little bit about those guys?
Yeah, well, Pat Fisher was in Washington when I came. He was 5'7", tough as nails, and we developed a great relationship out of mutual respect, understanding what was going on, how we played various receivers, and as the cornerback on the other side, we covered a lot of the same receivers. And we worked diligently on technique. And Pat was a hard worker, smart as could be, just a premier defensive back. The only drawback to him was that he was 5'7", and so many of the tall receivers like Harold Carmichael tested him a lot. You know, when you talk about defensive backs, you can't put anyone any higher than Kenny Houston. He's in the Hall of Fame. He just was amazing nose for the ball, a hard hitter. I remember him hitting someone from the Rams, and the running back got up and said, "Kenny, do you have to hit us that hard?" He was that kind of guy. Just that kind of guy. But Brig Owens, who came from the Cowboys to the Redskins, was one of the smartest players I had ever been associated with. And he actually really called the defenses for the defensive backs on a lot of occasions. He was a former quarterback with Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And he and I have remained friends as well over the years. And periodically we all get together in Washington, and we kind of reminisce, actually, because our defense was so good and so coordinated that it made us stronger. Maybe as individuals, the standout was Kenny Houston, but as teammates in the defensive backfield, along with the linebacking core, I think that we were among the best, and we're proud of that.
I think there's no doubt that was one of the greatest defenses in NFL history.
Well, I played for 10 years, and I had 30 interceptions, but I think I'm most proud of the fact that I gave up, I think, only 5 touchdown passes in that 10-year period.
That's not too bad, one every 2 years.
Pardon?
It's not too bad, one every 2 years.
And I think these are the little things that the writers don't see, and hopefully, though I got the respect of the receivers that I played against for all those many years. We had some great battles. We won some, we lost some, You show me a defensive back who's never gotten beat, and that's a defensive back who's sitting on the bench and not playing.
Yeah, so you talked about it. Who were some of your toughest matchups, wide receiver-wise, back then?
Well, I'll tell you, the toughest matchup I ever had was Mel Gray from the Cardinals.
Yeah.
This young man was as fast as lightning. He broke the sound barrier. He was really, really quick, and I had a lot of trouble with him because I could not make up any false steps that I might make. So I really had to depend on the defense helping me out. Paul Warfield was another great receiver. But the best receiver I ever played against was Roy Jefferson, who was on my own team. And I learned a lot from him, and I think he learned a lot from me.
Yeah.
And I give him all the respect in the world. And he, in my opinion, is a Hall of Fame receiver. There were some others, Drew Pearson from Dallas. There are a few that really stand out, but those are the ones that I remember, either because I got beat by them or because I had to work hard to keep pace with them.
Yeah. Yeah, Roy Jefferson, actually, if you compare his numbers, even though he played less years, his numbers are better than Lynn Swan's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
From looking it up, I think he caught like 100 extra passes, a couple thousand yards. But once again, that goes back to who the favorites of the media are, too.
Yeah, well, Roy lived by the beat of a different drummer. But he would go over the middle and catch that ball no matter where it was thrown. And I have seen him get hit, wince in pain, get back up, and was ready for the next play. He's what you call a pro's pro. And some of these defensive backs that you might speak with will tell you that Roy Jefferson was an absolute great receiver. And it didn't help. It didn't hurt to play against Charlie Taylor every day in practice either. That, of course, was very, very helpful.
Yeah.
All
right, so we're almost out of time. I know I've already kept you longer than I promised. I appreciate you for staying on.
No problem.
What have you been doing since you retired?
Well, when I retired, I actually moved to the Bahamas. Lived in Freeport for 18 years. I had a hotel there and some other investment opportunities, and came back to the United States in 1997. I came back because I had two daughters who had never lived in the U.S., and I took a position with the University of Florida here in Gainesville. And I was, as I mentioned, my degree is in psychology. Actually, it's in education with a major in psychology. And I took a counseling position at the University of Florida. And I was there for 5 years, but 9 to 5 just never appealed to me. So I retired from that job and actually became a consultant, brokering funds, and primarily in the area of real estate, and that's what I've been doing ever since. I do some things on the internet, but for the most part, I'm retired. I do find the internet challenging, and I have a couple websites that I operate, and it's fun. It's fun.
You want to tell people where they can find those websites?
Well, the first one is the football website, which is www.mikebass41.com. And that's a football website. The business website is www.kimlou.com, KIMLOU. So that stands for my two daughters, Kimberly and Louise. So that's www.kimlou.com and www.mikebass41.com. So I dibble and dabble on the internet as well as brokering funds for high-end projects. But most of my time is spent every afternoon almost playing golf at my local golf course here in Gainesville, where I've run into a group of us who are around the same age get together every afternoon to see who could tell the biggest lies. Gainesville is where the University of Florida is located, and so a lot of former pro athletes live here, former Gators. And this is where Steve Spurrier coached for many years.
Yeah, last week we had Ernie Mills, the old wide receiver from the late 80s on, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So,
Ernie or not. But.
Yeah, well, we congregate at the golf course, and we're all about the same age. And my hair continues. These guys who have been playing for a while, I've only been playing about 3 years, but I'm hooked. I'm an addict when it comes to golf. I'm getting better, but I'm nothing compared to some of these guys. But my competitive spirit keeps me pushing. Eventually, I'll go on the tour. I didn't understand why I wasn't shooting par after a year.
Well, Mike, you're welcome back anytime you want to come back, sir.
Well, I appreciate it, Mike. I thank you so very, very much. And you take care, and I'm sure we'll talk again in the near future.
All right. Thanks a lot, Mike.
Okay. Thank you. Bye now.
All right. Hey, guys, make sure you check out The Grueling Truth at thegrulingtruth.net on our new website. You can also listen to everything on iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher. Tomorrow night, we will have Mike Stenzerud, the former defensive lineman for the Houston Oilers, played for 4 or 5 other teams also. We will have our first installment of the Grueling Truth Draft Show, where we'll break down the AFC North, the NFC North. Thursday night, we'll have former 3-time Pro Bowl offensive lineman Luis Sharp from the St. Louis Cardinals, then Arizona Cardinals. Also Thursday night, we'll have our first weekly Grueling Truth boxing show, where we will break down the Bradley Pacquiao fight. Also, we'll have Kermit Cintron on to break down the fight with us, the pay-per-view coming up this weekend. Also, Kermit will come on to talk about his comeback. He will be coming back May the 6th. So make sure you check that out. Also, we'll have the Sports World Show with me and Aaron Zepnick Friday night, where we can break down the NCAA Final Four, the first week of the Major League Baseball season, and all the free agent signings in the NFL that have happened this week. Make sure you check out Gridiron Mo at www.gridironmo.com and Steelberg Box. So, for Mike Bass, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.